All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Wednesday, August 13th of 2025. Looking ahead here, we had some League of Legends action earlier this morning. We have a early MLB slate in progress. Good luck to all of you playing that slate. Later this afternoon, we have 6 MLB games on the main slate. We also had tennis. Earlier this morning, there is a 4-game WNBA slate tonight as well. So, should be a fun day of DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of 3 ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. Did forget that there is golf tomorrow morning, so we can also talk some golf strategy today as well. All right, let's get SaberSim pulled up here, and we will jump into questions that came in. So we actually had one question here that I do want to touch on. So this one said, would like a review of GiantSquid's MLB main slate from yesterday. I tried reviewing this morning myself, but couldn't get anything to populate after I reviewed the mini max. Okay, so couple things here. So number one is that we actually did a very detailed GiantSquid review on yesterday's office hours. So if you go to our past office hours and we go to yesterday's show, it doesn't look like it's been timestamped yet. We can go in here, and somebody asked, could you briefly cover in flashback what GiantSquid did different yesterday? He was all over the leaderboard in the main slates. This is our first question of the day. When it gets timestamped, it'll get timestamped right around here, but I'll just send a timestamp to you. So super detailed. What we saw yesterday, just to kind of talk about it, he was fading chalk pitchers pretty heavily. And I have a feeling, just based on how yesterday went, he probably did the same and it worked out for him. So, Paul Skeens did like very bad. Spencer Strider didn't pitch well either. So there's just like a bunch of opportunity in this slate that we reviewed. He was at least half the field under on like 3 of the chalkiest pitchers, which were Yamamoto, Crochet, and Eovaldi. And I don't think any of them got 5 fantasy points. And then yesterday, I'm gonna assume something similar happened, and we can just take like a quick look here, because I actually want to talk about one other thing here. I'm gonna imagine he did something really, really similar. So we're not gonna do like a full super in-depth breakdown like last time, but we will just take a quick peek here. So we go over to users. We're sorted for GiantSquid already. Right? When I go over to his exposures and I look at his pitchers, maybe I just sort by projected own. Okay. He full faded Flaherty, who didn't pitch very well. A little bit under on Peralta. He actually had some Skeens. Full fade on Strider, like negative 10%, and Strider had negative 9 fantasy points. The pitchers that he went over on, Rodon and Dustin May, pitched really well. So seems like he just got pitching very correct here. Faded, guys that did bad and played guys that did good. And it all kind of worked out. Got to like a decent amount of Baz, who got a little bit higher than his projection. So what I've noticed is his interesting stands at pitcher here. sometimes they're good, right? Like yesterday, he faded Yamamoto, Crochet, Eovaldi, but then he got to a bunch of Jeffrey Springs, and unfortunately, Jeffrey Springs didn't pitch well. But here, right, faded some other chalk like Flaherty. Some of these guys less negative leverage, but they didn't pitch well. And then the pitchers that he did play did end up doing good enough. So that's one thing here. Similarly related note, getting kind of off the review, but it looks like Jerry's here. Jerry said, I think that guy was a day early because he was definitely all over the leaderboard last night. Yeah, I think he's taking that same approach for sure. But one quick note here. Okay, so if you're in flashback, right, you select a contest, you go over to users, you filter for a user, right? If I go to a different contest and I filter for the user, I go to projections, I could see their exposures, right? I'm looking at the exposures in Squid's 150 lineups. If I go to a different contest without unchecking him, I can run into issues. So for instance, okay, let's say I'm done with that one and then I want to go to the mini-max. Okay, so I go to the mini-max. Let this load. Go to users. And then let's say I want to go and look at, JP Miles, right? Okay, I filter for him. I'm not going to see any exposures. The reason for this, the builder is still filtering for GiantSquid and is trying to do him and Miles together in his breaking. So what I needed to do is I needed to go back to that bat flip that I was on, and I need to unfilter here. And then I need to go, when I go to the mini-max this time, and then I go to users, my son JP. JP might have been in the other mini-max. Let's try the $1. Okay, yeah, JP's here. So JP's here. Now that I unfiltered Squid, now I can see all of JP's exposures. Like, the reason it's like this is like designed to like save people time when, like, if you have your lineups in your entry file, you can filter for yourself and then you can click on one contest, click on the other, click on the other. So you can see yourself every time through all the contests you played. Gets a little weird. Otherwise, I am talking to the team about how this works and just to make it aware that's like a little confusing because it doesn't show you, hey, you're still filtered for Squid in the other one. But that is, if you're not seeing exposures, chances are you filter for some other user in some other contest. So try and backtrack a little bit and then undo that filter. So just small thing I did want to mention because saw some people were getting caught up with that. Jerry said, good info. I forgot to unclick often before going to another contest for review. Yeah, me too, honestly. Happens to me too. All right, next question for today. Hi, Andrew. I recently came back to DFS and SaberSim. Welcome back. And I'm getting a sense of some of the changes, especially the diversifier, so I have a few questions. Can you give me a sense of if there are any settings I need to modify to get the most out of it? Also, when it comes to late swap, is the engine taking into account things like revealed ownership percent and current live scores from players? I am wondering if it's beneficial to late swap periodically through the night as the picture becomes clearer to give lineups higher ROI. Finally, is it beneficial to rebuild lineups each time new ownership or projections come out so the diversifier can use more optimal lineups, or only if a player is ruled out so they get out of the lineup? Thanks for the help. Okay, so a couple different questions to unpack here, all good questions. The first part is, can you give me a sense of if there are any settings I need to modify to get the most out of, basically like most out of the new tool? So the number one thing I would recommend in the new SaberSim is to always have a template for each of your contests and to have it starred. Okay. So what I mean is, you go over to this lineup section, you go to the templates in lineups, not the templates in projections. Okay. Two separate things. Templates and lineups. And then have one that says lineup group type contest. Create a lineup group for each of my contests, and then use portfolio mode. Or if you have ultimate, use portfolio plus. Okay. This is the simplest template that you can have, where it will create a group for each contest that you are playing. Okay. Then you save it. Second thing I would do is I would star it. What starring does is that every time I open up a new build, every time I play a new slate, every new day I come back into SaberSim, we are automatically going to use this template every time you upload an entry file. Okay, so uploading entries got a little bit easier. You don't have to go into the contest tab to upload. Instead, it is a button up here in the top left. You could access it from anywhere in the app. Okay, having a template is a good thing. It's going to protect you from problems. I was just talking with somebody the other day, earlier this week, and they were having a problem with late swap, where their late swap button was inactive, and it's because they didn't have any groups with contests because they didn't have their template starred. So then I was telling them, hey, it is easier if you keep one starred. That way you don't run into that problem. Now, you don't have to use a template like this. This is the simplest template to use. You could, start to get creative and mess around with templates and group some contests together. I've talked to users who are doing stuff where they're saying, create a lineup group for all of my single entries, for instance, and say, max entries equals 1, right? 1. And they'll do something like this. And they're like, hey, for my single entries, I want to group them all together. But then for my multi-entries, maybe I want them separate, right? So then they'll have one for single entry, and then they'll have another one for like bigger stuff, right? So you can get very creative with this, but the simplest version is to keep one like this and use that all the time, okay? Second part, I am wondering if it's beneficial to late swap periodically throughout the night as the picture becomes clear to give lineups higher ROI. Okay, this is in regard to late swap. Okay, wait, I missed a part. Also, when it comes to late swap, is the engine taking into account things like revealed ownership percent and current live scores from players? The answer is sport dependent, okay? For baseball, yes, we are. For WNBA, no, we are not. Same thing goes for for NBA, yes, we are. For NHL, no, we are not, right? So there are certain times we are, and there are certain times we are not. The easiest way to tell, in my opinion, is if you go to a sport. So let's say we go to baseball. If I go to the contest tab, in the field lineups column, if there is a gear icon, you can click it, and then you can see these toggles. Use live fields, use live sims. These are on. So for baseball, yes, we are doing it, and we are doing it automatically for you. Okay? If I go to WNBA for tonight, 4-gamer. Say that again. There is no gear icon here for use live fields, use live sims, which is an easy indication that no, we do not have live data for WNBA. Okay, so that's the simplest way I can think of to point that out. So keep that in mind. Now, for the sports where we do have the live data. So getting into question 3, I'm wondering if it's beneficial to late swap periodically throughout the night as the picture becomes clear to give lineups higher ROI. So yes, it is beneficial, even if no players have been ruled out, right? So like, for instance, we had the main slate tonight, right? There are 4 games all within 5 minutes of each other at lock. Then there is like a 2.5 hour window, and then there are 2 games later in the slate. I would absolutely recommend, if you have contest sims, which contest sims specifically use the live data, to swap before the last 2 games of the night. I think that is a worthwhile swap. Now, I would personally only do that one swap. There are people who would argue that, well, you could do a third swap to take advantage of the live ownership that gets released between the Dodgers and the Angels. That is true. For me personally, I'm okay not doing it. But if you are trying to, squeeze every last ounce of edge you can, then yes, there is additional edge in doing that. For me, it's not, I don't feel like I'm losing enough that I feel bad skipping that window. But that's totally up to you. We talked about this a lot as a team, and we think it's okay to skip the window if you choose to, right? Now, if like somebody got scratched or something like that and you got to change players, then, it's different, right? I would swap. But talking about specifically just trying to take advantage of the live ownership projections for one game here, I think it's okay to let that window go. Which is part of the last question. Is it beneficial to rebuild lineups each time new ownership or projections come out so the diversifier can use more optimal lineups, or only if a player is ruled out so they get out of the lineup pool? Thanks for the help. So if player gets ruled out, you 100% want to, in my opinion, you should quick swap first and then late swap. I think that's like the best way to do it. I've said this before and I still believe it to be true. I think quick swap is the best tool to get out players out of your lineups. And I think late swap is a better tool for re-optimizing your lineups when players are locked. I don't think late swap is the best tool for removing out players out of your lineups. I think quick swap is better. Now you could swap at every window, like what if the slate doesn't look like this, right? What if the slate looks like yesterday? Go back to the MLB main. There were 1, 2, 3 games and then 30-minute break, and then 4 games and then a 20-minute break, and then 2 games and then an hour and 20-minute break, and then like a 20-minute break between the last game. A lot more spread out, right? Like, what would you do in this scenario? Some people would say like, hey, swap at every opportunity, right? I take a little bit different approach. I am more looking, I'm basically game watching, not like sitting there like studying the games, but like scoreboard watching a little bit more, and just like, hey, has anything significant happened here that I think is going to be important for the slate overall? Like, what if the Cubs put up 6 runs in the first inning? That's pretty important, right? They've already outscored their run total. A lot of players probably have a lot higher projections, like live projections, than their pre-slate projection. Like, yeah, I would swap for that information, actually. Like, in this first window, I'm like, yeah, I want to take into account this because Cubs lineups are really, really good. And then if you don't have Cubs lineups, you probably got to change things. If nothing really happens in this 30-minute window, pretty quiet game, maybe 1-0, maybe 0-0, but, it's bottom of the second inning by the time the Pirates and Milwaukee's getting underway, I probably wouldn't swap. You could swap for the ownership updates, but me personally, I'm probably like not swapping there. Not to say like I'm right, and anything else is wrong. I'm just giving you guys like what I do, right? That's how I feel about the situation. But I'm a little bit more like scoreboard hunting in those scenarios. So those are my opinions there. I think we touched each part of this question. If there's any additional information or anything I missed or want follow up on, let me know. Jerry said, speaking of WNBA, why no green check marks where the lineups are good to go per team? Yeah, good question. It's basically something that we didn't get to build out this season. So like last season was our first year supporting WNBA projections like at all. So we had third-party projections last year. And then this year our team built probably next season we'll have check marks for WNBA. And then also, fingers crossed, next season we have daily contest flashback for WNBA. So like right now we have to do flashback manually. So we like batch it. So we went in like around mid-July and backfilled all the WNBA contest flashback sim ROIs from like the start of the season to like mid-July. And then we haven't done it again. So I think, these things will get progressively better, but that's why. Jerry said DFS is actually making the WNBA very watchable for me. It's cool. It's getting a lot of buzz. It's definitely on the come up. I see, more cities are going to be adding teams over the next 5 years here. So it's only getting bigger. All right. Joshua said, how quickly does the ownership get updated after a game locks? Wondering when I should be doing that swap or if I should wait until about 15 minutes before the next game. Good question. So typically information gets pulled and processed, I would say about 10 to 15 minutes after a game starts. So like here, right? Like yesterday, you had this like 30-minute window. You probably would have gotten all of the live ownership before the Pittsburgh-Milwaukee game because there was like 30 minutes. I think you would have got it within 20 for sure. Game sims are a little different. Those run every half inning. So like say the half inning ends, give it like 2 to 3 minutes. And then when you go to the games section, there's going to be a column when the game is active called the game situation. It will tell you where the game is at. It'll be like, hey, in the Sims, we are at bottom of the second inning and the score is 2-0. Because maybe you're watching the game and they just scored 3 runs in the top of the third, right? So like the actual game is 5-0, but the half inning hasn't ended yet. So we haven't processed the information. That part's super important for late swap, right? Because you can build your late swap lineups. This is what I do. Again, going back to like what I do. I build my late swap lineups and then I watch the game situation and then I wait for it to update after the half inning ends. I wait as like long as I can, right? Like let's say we're back in this window, Cubs score 6 runs, but the half inning hasn't ended. I am waiting as close to this 4:40 p.m. Pacific time window to like, I know like, okay, I need 5 minutes, right? So I'm like, okay, like 4:33, like 4:34. When can I wait for this half inning to end so I can rerun my contest sim? I don't need to rerun my late swap lineups. Those are going to be the same no matter what. It's just a matter of picking which ones are going to be the best, right? Because whatever happens here doesn't affect lineup building. These games are locked. But what happens here can affect which lineups get selected or which ones you want to take with you, right? So wait as long as you can. Let those game situations update. If like there's pending information that you think is important, rerun your contest sim, save those lineups, upload them. Good question from Joshua. Do I need to refresh projections to get that data and then rebuild the swaps? No. So The game situations will update automatically without you needing to do anything. Like you just sit here and watch it and the scores will change. You do not need to rebuild your swaps. All you need to do is resim your swaps. So what I would do is I would wait for the game situation to update. I would already have my lineups built, and then I would just click the globe, which is like the contest sim button, if you've already run it once. So rerun that contest sim. All right. Follow-up from Jerry. I'm obsessed with the contest review post-slate, but really want to understand it more. For example, if all of your lineups are plus ROI after contest sims run, how can you still end up with a negative ROI portfolio post-slate? Does it analyze your lineups based on the way the slate actually played out? I'm even looking at individual lineups and trying to figure out any pattern that makes a lineup plus ROI versus negative ROI. Any info would be greatly appreciated. # student of the game. Okay, really good question. So the big differences between post-contest sims and pre-contest sims, there's basically two big differences. Number one is the number of field lineups that are used. And then the second one is the differences in actual ownership versus projected ownership, or even the actual construction of the lineups versus how we expected the lineups to look, right? It's like, in theory, ownership projections could be the same, but maybe we projected more 5-2s and the field ended up playing more 4-3s, right? You can get similar ownership numbers, but different constructions, right? That can impact sim ROIs. You could actually get different ownership. Maybe we projected some players at 25 and they came in at 30, some players at 25 and they came in at 20, right? So the post-contest sim is going to be better because it uses all of the actual lineups. And so you can use that information, or the information that it returns, I'd say is more trustworthy. So I would stick with like using that as your source of truth. Now, getting into like the analysis part, you will find like opportunities where, or there will be times like when you're looking at like two lineups, like, okay, I'm looking at this lineup and it's negative ROI, and then I'm looking at this other lineup and it's positive ROI. Why? Right? Main things I like to look for are ownership, projection, correlation. Some combo of like those three, and like what's going on there. Potentially looking at like salary, like how much salary did you leave on the table? So like salary, projection, ownership, correlation. Those are like the main things I want to look at. I've seen it where it's like, okay, hey, this lineup, we just played too low projected of a lineup if the ownership is this level. Like this projection works if the ownership is half this, right? So you can like find things like that. And then, maybe you work on like some filters or like different things like that to kind of guard yourself from like those type of situations, which is like generally what I'll recommend. So I think there's opportunities there to learn things, to weed out bad lineups. And then if you just weed out more bad lineups, well, what do you end up with? You end up with more good lineups, right? So you're raising the floor, you're raising the mean by getting rid of some of the trash like down on the bottom. Joshua said, gotcha. Much appreciated. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Going over, jumping back to Discord real quick. Looks like we are caught up there. Cool. Caught up here in the chats. So I think we are all set. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.